What's going on, Workforce? Brian here, and in today's video we're reviewing patch 4.5. Having experienced everything it has to offer, having gotten to go hands-on with Blue Mage, how is the raid, how is the dungeon, how is the story, how is the trial, all of that here for you right now. I'm going to say minor spoiler possibility as I talk about it, as I go into the story. I want to just kind of warn everybody, please have at least finish the story, have a concept, or not, or don't be spoiler sensitive. I don't think I'm going to really spoil the story in and of itself, but I just do want to give myself a little out unless something slips. So, all right, patch 4.5. How do I feel about it? Where does it fall in the whole Stormblood series? And I honestly have to say, especially coming off of patch 4.4, there is a vast amount of improvement in 4.5. It is really stark. I felt 4.4 was really thin in terms of content, especially when you compared it to 2.4 and 3.4, both of which patches really kind of brought in a lot of different content, and content that also kind of refreshed the backlog. So obviously the biggest catch here is 4.5, Blue Mage. I've done so much 2.0 content, I can't even really quantify it in terms of number and having to run for obviously farming of the skills. So I felt like it is very clear to see that I think Blue Mage was obviously delayed. I guess it either wasn't ready, or maybe they felt like it was going to be a fun announcement out at FanFest. For whatever reason they chose or didn't choose, and it just worked out that way. 4.4 really felt lacking in terms of some kind of big piece of content that really just incentivized, really drove us into previous content. Like if 2.4 was Ninja, which was a job that you had to level, and thus you're back out, in the world and in the dungeons, etc., leveling that. And 3.4 was Wanderer's Tales, which incentivized running previous content for obviously weekly or every other week rewards, depending on how active you were engaged with the Wanderer's Tales system. So 4.4 very lacking. Boom, comes in 4.5. Obviously we got Blue Mage, and you have, just a sheer amount of people out in the open world playing this game, really participating in a lot of this old content, and it really feels good. Is it going to feel good in 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 16 weeks? That's going to be the real, litmus test. That's going to be the real judgment on the success of the limited job system. I highly suspect that it's not. I highly suspect that it's kind of going to become this side content that weaves in with the normal rhythm of these updates as they increase the level cap, as they add in new limited jobs. We're going to kind of see that bubble up here and there. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that progresses overall. A lot of people want it in roulettes. A lot of people want it at the end game. And having gone hands-on with it and experienced it firsthand, I absolutely do not want those things for this job. I like what they've done with it. I really am looking forward to seeing where it goes with it. Overall, at the end of the day, we'll have to wait and see. If it is a success, it's going to have to be, there's something that's going to be measured by time. It can't be measured in one simple review. But taking Blue Mage and then taking obviously all the other quality of life updates literally ties into, I think this is 100%. This is a A+ update right there in and of itself. You've got the mounts that can fly, the primal ponies. You can now also favorites, just selection your roulettes. Then on top of that, you have the golden saucer updates. You got mahjong. You've got all these little things. So in terms of another section, which is weird to kind of start off with, but I want to touch on this first. Absolutely A+. They nailed it. They knocked it out of the park. I could not be happier with what I have in January. We'll have to wait and see, and I'll provide updates if that changes. So, all right, Dungeon, the Gimlet Dark, really set my expectations high based off of the trailer with Shadowbringers, and pretty much kind of dashed them accordingly. I'm not going to say it's it's not a bad dungeon. The difficulty, it felt like a step down from the Burn, which was weird. And then on top of that, it didn't live up to what the trailer alluded to with this war zone. They tried a lot of new things. It was really interesting and exciting to see how that played out. But at the end of the day, I think I would give this at best a C-. In that case, a D, I guess would be probably also right on par. The dungeon itself is forgettable. The bosses are interesting, and after you do them a couple times, they just become just another dungeon in your roulette that you have to run. Now you shift that though. This is also, we're going to get more story in the next update. We're going to do all these different things. So will we go back to the Gimlet Dark, or are we going to see another side of this dungeon? Is this going to be this continual war zone? I don't know. I'm curious to see what ends up playing out with it in the next half, which is going to be out in March. We're going to get some more teases here on February 2nd with the Paris Fan Fest. So there's, you know, it's going to be weaved in, the information that we're going to get, and whether we understand it or not. But again, I think I stand by my score. Easily a C-. Can easily kind of shift into the D, and probably will. Like, if you end up just getting this dungeon after time and time and again, it kind of feels like, you know, you can kind of just burn it down. And as the gear level and as people's gear level increases and as they come back into the game and they get stronger, it's just not going to be something that I think it's going to leave a lasting impression. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're having fun with it. I don't mean to sour your opinion of it. If you're looking, you know, if you really like it, that's great. It's not a bad dungeon, but when you coming on in comparison, it's definitely not my favorite out of the run of Stormblood. And I think, if I'm honest, I would say the burn is absolutely my favorite. Every time I got the burn, even in the long life of 4.4, it was still pretty exciting, and it still could provide a challenge, especially with the final boss. Anyway, so the trial. All right, at the end of the day, the trials, them being disconnected from the main story. They did it in Heavensward, and I get it, I get it, but at the same time, I long for a reason to care more, having it looped into the main story. This, I don't know if it will fit naturally into the main story, but whenever they bring in the primals and whenever they bring in, you know, the icons that we have to fight, we are the icon slayer, it feels like that is taking a major step back. What is going on with that? And even the story itself that in this game has alluded to it, the continual struggles with the beastmen and their tribes, yet there really isn't, we haven't really had to worry about primals, in my opinion, as a part of the main story. And I'm wondering if we'll ever see that, you know, come back in to play at some point, whether we revisit these at some point in the future, or if it's just going to be this way going forward. But the core concepts, the core content, the fight itself was really cool. I loved how when you fell down, you fell into the water, and you know, you're knocked out. You have to, you know, get out of the water. But at the end of the day, you're not just out and then you have to be revived immediately. Is it amazing? Am I putting it on farm? Maybe I will. We'll have to wait and see. I think when you look at the dungeon and the trial, though, they are really easily overshadowed by the raid. And it's in that context that I want to say for the trial, it really kind of falls into that, you know, that B-, that C+ range of what I enjoyed about it. I actually really got more into the story. I really liked how they concluded the trial story as a whole. Like, that was something that, like, yeah, we knew what was happening. Yeah, we knew the direction we were going. But the way that they designed the characters and what was happening there, I thought that ended up being pretty cool to witness and be a part of, and to conclude. Again, I wasn't fully invested in this as its concept, but the fights were interesting. I really enjoyed them. But I think still the last trial was probably the best in the whole series from my perspective. They did a lot of cool things within the whole series of the Four Lords with the different battles, and I really appreciated them kind of taking some risks, making some changes for the mechanics, and that was always really fun to see. So trial gets a, you know, B- to C+, you know, depending on the day and what I feel like doing. Let's go ahead and talk about the story, and then we're gonna talk about the trial. So as far as the story goes, it's hard because it definitely is a B in that range, and it's not a B because it did anything wrong. It's a B because it kind of obviously gets itself cut off from the later half. So this is going to be something we're going to have to revisit here in when part 2 drops in the story. It gets a B because I think the cliffhanger, the final thing, was really nothing. It's just, you know, okay, and this person, this individual, not to spoil anything, is just walking through the Gimlet Dark. So it really, I think it lacked a good, you know, really interesting punch or an interesting twist, especially when you compare it to that of Heavensward, where you have a mini, you know, moon that's holding Shinryu as they're struggling to get out, the sacrifice of, you know, Palalimo in that case. And so that's kind of, you know, if you go from previous expansion to this expansion, the conclusion here is just kind of like, okay. So I'm really excited to see where part 2 goes with this, because I think obviously that's where a lot of the meat is going to be. I think that's where a lot of the cliffhanger is going to come into play. I think that's where we're going to see hopefully some conclusions or some new beginnings as a part of the story and as it takes us into Shadowbringers. So as far as it goes, the story definitely, like I said, is in the B range. It could easily shift into an A when you look at the story overall for 4 or 5, but since we can't do that, I'm only scoring it off of what we know right now. And there was definitely some key moments. There were definitely some epic moments when you talk about the meeting with Varys, what we learned, and at the core of it, utterly fascinating when it comes down to the sheer amount of exposition that is bestowed upon the Eorzean alliance. Things that the player, not the character knows, but we the player knew because we've been able to see these cutscenes from other parts of the game, things that we know have been going on in the shadows and behind the scenes. Yet, this was a really fun and quick way to be able to shed that light on, to share that information out so that everybody is aware of it. Varys seems like a very good villain from my perspective. I think that he's not an Ascian, but yet we're wondering, is he going to join us? He doesn't obviously like the Ascians, but in his own twisted way, he is the hero. And that, I think, always brings about some of the best villains. The best villains are those that really think they're doing good. They struggle, it's ego, they struggle with all these different, character flaws, and it's always interesting to see, why aren't people joining me? Why aren't they, coming about? But he's also a sympathetic villain. He's also a strategic villain. He's not willing to necessarily sacrifice the lives of his men if he can avoid it. And so that he goes about those different ways. So it shows that he's not completely one-sided. He's a very varied villain. And it was really cool to be able to see that coupled with the various other glimpses that we've had over him. Hopefully he gets to be more present, and hopefully he isn't somebody that is just concluded like we've seen with some villains like the Griffin. But who knows? These people are crazy. So we're going to have to see if we can stop them, if they can be stopped, if they should be stopped, because we have the coming calamity of light, which we are worried about, and which essentially the Black Rose should interact with in some way. Will we destroy everything, or will we save the world? I don't know. It's that in and of itself, there's so many questions left unanswered. So again, great. Definitely some really epic moments that blew me away. Really happy with the delivery and so much voice acting, and I'm hoping that we get to see that continue going forward. It didn't feel like there were many cutscenes that were just straight up there without the voice. And obviously, every time the more they can do that, I think the better it gets, because the voice acting, they do a really good job with it in this game. So the weakness of the story, like I said, is the part, but it's also overshadowed by the story of the raid. Return to Ivalice concludes, and this is an A+. This is perfection. This is probably the best raid series that I've really connected with. If I was going to rate them, it's Return to Ivalice, Crystal Tower, and then the Void Ark raid series. And all of those are really good. I think with Void Ark, the weaknesses were the difficulty bouncing around, where it went from really easy to oh, now we're going to have a challenge. And I felt like at least Return to Ivalice stepped up the difficulty each time. It really kind of helped, train you. So when you went into this raid, it's doable, it's passable, it's beatable, and it's trained people who've been playing it to understand that concept. And then you have the story, you have them introducing the Viera, you have Fran, you have them tying in to the War of the Lions, you have them tying in to Final Fantasy XII in various interesting ways with various, I love how they alluded to these different things, but it's also their own thing. And the zones, obviously the zone itself was gorgeous, and it makes me just wish that we could go and play around in these areas, in these zones. Can we free Dalmasca? Is it even possible? I really cannot wait to see. The fights, rock solid. The final boss and the transition and everything that it did so freaking amazingly well. I can't express how much I really appreciated this raid, and how much it makes me really want to return to Ivalice. How it really makes me wish that they would remaster some of these old games. They're doing 12. It's coming out for the Nintendo and the Xbox this year, which is great to see. But also with Tactics, with War of the Lions, that they really kind of revisit that. If they could do it in an HD remaster way, if they could just rebuild it for modern systems, PC, console, that would be epic. It makes me want to experience more of that world, and hopefully Square Enix also wants to deliver that to us, because that's why I think the story in and of itself, still got to be, while the raid the story, that how everything kind of concluded, with the exception of the weird acting at the end of the story. But I really, really appreciated it. I really connected with it. And it was the highlight. It's the highlight of Stormblood. Like when you look at it, when you look at this raid with the voiced bosses, and then you go look at Omega's these trial fights, but then we have the 24-man raid, and it's like, it is this epic thing. You have these multiple bosses. It feels more raid-wide and raid style. And then again, the bosses are voice acted. It really felt that the budget went over here. And not that, you know, Omega and the Alphascape or any of them are bad. It just, these were just kind of trial fights as a part of a raid, you know, higher difficulty, greater challenge. But we really kind of lost the sense of a raid. We really lost that sense of maybe even a mini boss into the final boss. We really lost that sense of it. And I don't know if they could have made it work with the nature of what they did with Omega. I'm just hoping maybe with Shadowbringers we get to see some really cool stuff in the 8-man raid itself. You know, who knows? Maybe we'll get to see it also tie in more to the story if we get to go do some more work with Zodiark. Whether we're working for him or against him, we'll have to wait and see, and hopefully we'll know soon enough. But that's my opinion. I'd love to know yours. Sound off in the comments below. Where does everything fall for you? Let's have that conversation. Anyway, guys, for Work To Game, my name is Brian. Thanks so much for watching this video. Hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Hey guys, it's me. Oh, well, if you don't know me, my name's Terry. I'm a beautiful Tyrannosaurus from Texas, and it just doesn't get more country than that. I tell you what, I grew up in these parts. I was resurrected by a ghost, and that ghost told me that I needed to come out and hang out on Work To Game's YouTube channel. To tell everybody, they should totally hit that thumbs up. Thumbs down make Terry hungry. It makes me hungry. You hear me? Hungry. Anyway, Terry, just keep it together. Keep it together, Terry. All right, guys. So, with that, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and hit subscribe if you haven't already to see more of me and my beautiful nose. Okay. All right. Good talking to you. I'll see you guys soon. I'll see you real soon. Terry, the Tyrannosaurus from Texas.